Okay. We got John Fitzgibbon, George DuBois.
Hey, George
Lloyd.
George the boy. That's
No,
more
no,
George.
he's the boy. George Dubois.
The boy.
Yeah, it's Du Bois, Wyoming, you know. I mean, even though the French trappers did found it.
No, and my French was never very good. Let's see. Molly Rose is absent. I want to just get through it.
No, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I decided to come.
All right, here. And George wrote, I think he couldn't make it. Is that right?
Roger, if you just look at the screen, you can probably see who's here. You have Molly Rose, George Dubois, yourself, and Lloyd. So you have 4 of the members, and I'm sorry, and John Fitzgibbon as well. So you have 5 members of the Long Range Planning, and you have your councilman liaison, Chris Sapp, on as well.
Right. Okay, and Ed, is it Ed Bordelane? He's officially resigned. I guess it hadn't ever been official. And
Right.
so Diane said she would advertise that, for that there's an opening on LRP.
I thought Lloyd took his position.
I guess Diane didn't have it, and I didn't have it that Ed had officially, said he couldn't make any more meetings. I knew he was having trouble with that, but he hadn't officially resigned. So I don't know, Lloyd.
One more, right? I think we're 7.
Yeah, so now we're 6.
Yep.
Okay, well, there's no one here from the public, so I guess we can start the meeting. Want to deal with the signage first thing on the agenda?
The minutes are first.
We did get the minutes. I'm sorry. I guess Diane didn't have the minutes, and I see they were on the agenda package. So we could approve the minutes if you've had a chance to see them.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So minutes are approved from the June 25th. Okay. All right, first item on the agenda was the signage. And I see Kimberly Horn presented a fairly long kind of qualification package, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, Roger, I probably would turn this over to Chris. I believe you worked with Scott on this.
Yeah, okay. Chris?
Did everybody get a chance to, I tried to put together a summary, give a little bit of the history, but to sum it up, Scott and I had sat down and, we've got a couple vendors that are under service contracts, and 2 of those are Wade Trim and Kimberly Horn. So it made sense, as opposed to going through this whole process of RFQ when we have the talent essentially already in-house. Wade Trim did respectfully decline. They do have a department that does this type of thing, but I believe they're located in Detroit. But either way, out of state, not local. So they know the town would want preference to have somebody local that has a handle on who we are, what we are, etc. Kimberly Horn also has a department that deals with signage, and they had presented a resume of sorts for LRP to take a look at. And I apologize, it was not part of the agenda. I noticed it today. We shot it out, so I don't know if everybody got a chance to take a look at it. But they have done stuff as local, as Kissimmee, so they are familiar with municipalities, HOAs, businesses, etc.
Yeah. Could I ask a question? I think Kimberly Horn's plenty qualified to do this and everything. I don't have a problem with them doing the design and putting out the bid packages and all that, but I don't like the idea of making it a turnkey with them, because they really don't have production capability, and I mean, they can oversee it, but why pay an upcharge to have a middleman? You know what I'm saying? What was the thought of the town council in that process?
Wasn't theirs would be just a design, not a design and build or anything?
Well,
Yeah.
go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, town council's not discussed this because we want to put it in front of LRP first, but basically what we're looking for from them would be individual IPOs for a specific project to come up with design. And, of course, we could put it out for a request for quotes for actual production of it.
Okay, because I don't mind recommending them to do it, but to do the design portion of it, but I don't see giving them the turnkey of it.
No, Molly, I think where and I don't necessarily think confusion is a good word. Maybe it's just a change of direction a little bit, slight change. When we were originally talking months ago, we were looking at kind of a DBO type thing, design, build, operate. And I think that it kind of narrowed the field to what we had. And then what we also felt like as we started going through this, if you're looking for graphic, folks that could actually do the graphic fabrication work, may not have as much of the design intents that we would want. And so I think we kind of backed off a little, realized that we already had an in-house under contract engineer that actually has, and that's one of the reasons why we picked Kimberly Horn back in the day, was because they had this wide berth of urban planners and graphic designers, and they had a wide berth. And so we were like, well, maybe it would be best if we just allowed them to actually work the design. And Chris, please forgive me if I'm stepping on toes here, but the whole idea was maybe we, they understand our town, they're working with us on all of our roadways and stormwater, they're actually doing the board trail, and so it became apparent that maybe holistically for a design approach, they might be the best, and then we'll just go out and bid it for fabrication.
Yeah, I think it'd be very similar to the engineering projects, where they get it all the way through engineering, and then maybe part of their scope would help with finding that actual fabricator in the end, because we may need some assistance with that.
Yeah, and also they could give a cost estimate, and then some signage, being these will be specific kind of deals with them to do a sign, maybe need to give them what we think is our budget for a sign, so they don't go, some of the ones obviously they've done are pretty elaborate, so
Right.
I think we give, but it'd be basically a design, which usually includes estimating and cost estimation, so.
Correct. And then from that point, as we do with roads, let's say a road project, then we would go out for bids for specific contractors to do the work.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I'm okay with all that, because we tried going the other way and did not pick the right signage company, so they did a bad design, and
I think that was
they fabricated a bad sign, so there you go. So okay.
I think that was my fear, Molly, is that if you don't have the right design team, you end up with what we ended up with. And
Yeah.
Is that big red?
And having worked with, you and I having worked with graphic, both installation and design firms for years, I think what you'll find is that most folks that fabricate signs are very rudimentary in their design and look. And so it's probably a much better approach for us to do this so we don't end up with big red.
Okay.
I think there's a manufacturing firm, I think, that does a lot of the villages stuff, that does typical signage like this. So I can reach out to them and see, once we have a design from KHA, we can reach out to a couple vendors that I know over there.
There's a ton of vendors here that, we use at Universal Studios.
Yeah.
So we've got the talent. I mean, great graphic design and signage companies that fabricate for Disney, Universal. So I think I think we'll find the right guys based on the type sign that we're doing and based on the design intent that we have.
So John, do you find that Kimberly Horn has been like competitive cost-wise?
Well, we're working against negotiated and competitively bid unit rates. And they've been pretty good working with us on, their hours and everything else. And we have the opportunity to go back and look at their, the rates of what they bid during competitive mode through the RFQ process and post RFQ. And then, as a matter of fact, in some instances, they've actually given money back to the town if they hadn't spent it all. And we just had that happen the other day with them. So I feel it's been fair and equitable, and for the talent and stuff that we get.
Okay.
I think Scott's not on because of the red sign.
What?
I think Scott chose to miss this meeting and throw me into it because he knew the signage was going to be discussed.
Yeah, he learned a really big lesson there.
Yeah.
They did.
Well, I guess the motion for LRP would be recommend hiring Kimberly Horn as a designer, for sign designage. Make it clear that that's the limit of it, typical engineering type or design
Yes.
contract. It's not a construction thing. I guess my only question before we do a motion, do we want to specify any particular signs they would start with, or just leave it open? As when we'll designator council can designate what signs we want them first to be looking at, entrance.
I recommend to leave it open.
Oh, sorry, Robert, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'd recommend to leave it open because you're gonna have various signs that they're gonna need to work on, whether it be entrance, wayfinding, stuff like that. So they'll do each IPO per whatever signage that you would like to see.
Okay.
But wouldn't it be safe to say we don't want a Kissimmee entrance arch?
Yes.
Yes.
So they can rule that out.
I like the one at the Villages that goes over I-75, I guess it is.
Yeah, really.
If you've seen that one, if you've been up that way.
Yeah. I think we can limit it to one side of the right of way.
Yeah.
Well,
We're actually, the new facilities, we're actually designing Klieg lights. So it'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Those lights, the three that kind of spin. Really cool.
So I will make a motion then that we recommend that we hire Kimberly Horn to do design and supervision then,
Yeah, and I'll second that, but I'll amend that a little bit, Molly, because they're already hired. So I think the motion should be that we agree that we should use our existing engineering services firm and that any signage will be done through IPO, specifically for the tasks at hand.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just have staff draw up an amendment to the current master service agreement that we have.
I think that's already part of it, Chris, to be honest with you. I thought all we'd have to do is issue an IPO to them. Because
Okay.
we had urban planning, it was general engineering services. So
Right.
I think we're probably okay in the way that the language is structured for their master services agreement. And so the individual IPOs would then be the ones that we would take that scope and define it specifically to that group of graphic designers for the firm.
So if they did a sign that we didn't like, let's say the first one they do we go, oh, this is nothing what we wanted. We have the ability to then take another route, right? Go to another firm. Because the IPO is by sign, right?
Or by sign group, it could be,
Yeah.
hey, design
Yeah.
the gateway signs.
Right.
Yeah.
got it.
But I think it's an iterative design process, so they'd probably come to us, get our input, feedback, then they'd give us a couple of high level concepts. We'd say nay on this one, but yay on that one, and so at that point, I think it's just a matter of going through the process we're going through right now with the facilities.
That's fine. This is a little tiny town. We got more signs than we have lights in here already. I'm so over signs, but yes, go ahead.
Here's your sign.
Yeah. Okay. You got a motion, you got a second, right?
I think we made a motion and then we amended the motion slightly, and so we're just waiting on a second.
All right, I'll second the emotion.
Okay.
Did you say you'll second the emotion?
The emotion, the design.
I said yes. That's exactly what I said. And then I sang the song "Signs, Signs, Signs." Everywhere there's signs.
Okay, Roger, you're up. Did you freeze?
He's gone.
He's gone.
All right.
All right.
Since he's gone, you still have a quorum. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay,
Next
well, I
thing up.
guess since our chair left us, I'm vice chair, I'll have to start taking over. Okay,
Yeah.
next update on the Ward Trail pedestrian bridge. Is that something you're giving, Robert, or is that something that Chris is presenting?
No, it's just the update is that the town council approved the IPO for Kinley Horn Associates to go ahead and begin the design of the new pedestrian bridge. If you've seen the flagging out there and surveyors out there, that's exactly what they're doing right now. They will hold some public workshops and charrettes to try to get a feel of what design the town council and the residents would like to see. We'll probably start off with the stakeholders meeting. The baseline for the height of the design will be the actual road bridge. So we're going to increase the height so some boats can get underneath there. But if we ever wanted to raise the road bridge, that might be a discussion point as well. But remember, if you raise an actual road bridge, then you have to widen the span as well. So we have to see if there's any possibility of how far we can actually increase the width. And the width would have to be increased to the north and not to the south, if that's even a possibility. But once we get some meetings set up, we'll let you guys know because you would be stakeholders from LRP. But I think the intent is to create some sort of tie into the railroad, like you see over the West Orange Trail, over the Turnpike, something to that effect. And it would be wide enough for 2 golf carts to pass each other. Understanding that when we talked about the Ward Trail, once the golf carts get over the bridge, then they would get back onto Old Dirt Main or Lake Butler Boulevard, and the pedestrians would move on to the Ward Trail.
Hmm.
And up
So-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So it's, the plan is that the pedestrian or multimodal path follows the contour of the bridge itself this time.
Yes, the
Okay.
bridge will be constructed first because we're still working with the West Orange Healthcare Alliance task force, whatever you want to call it, where we're connecting all of the trail systems in West Orange County. And then we're going to see if the West Orange Healthcare Alliance will be able to fund the entire project, or if they're going to be funding it in little sections. Regardless of what happens with that alliance, we're still going to be looking for funding to do phase 1, which is from north all the way up to Windermere Elementary School.
So does the bridge itself have to be rebuilt, the portion that the automotive vehicles are on?
No, it doesn't. People want it to be either higher but the problem is when you go higher, you have to make it wider. And then if you make it wider, then FDOT might jump in because I think we're about 2 inches short from it actually being an FDOT bridge, or we have to meet FDOT guidelines. And if you widen the span, then we might be blocking entranceways into people's properties, especially on the south of the canal. And we don't want to do that. So we'd probably want to make sure that it's the same height and same width.
Okay, so if we do that, then all we have to do is add the multimodal portion to it, right?
No,
Well,
this
it's
would be
actually a
bridge.
separate bridge, right, Robert?
Yeah, separate
Yeah.
bridge. So you're gonna
Okay,
have
so we don't have to then rebuild the automotive section or the
no,
vehicle section.
no, people are saying that if we were to do that, because people want to see that road bridge higher so they can get their bigger boats through there when
Yeah.
water levels are high.
Okay, those of us that live out here, there are some of us that might think the same way I do, and you don't want to do that because then you're going to get more people launching over in Lake Down and coming into and making Lake Butler even busier than it is and stuff. So
Yeah.
there are people that don't really want that to happen.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much impossible to maintain people's entranceways if you widen the span. So I don't think that's going to happen, but at least we can raise the pedestrian bridge.
Oh, yeah. That would be good.
Bridge.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that
we
would
can
be
get rid of
good.
that. We can get rid of that pedestrian bridge and that crazy ramp
Right.
and actually do
Yeah.
multi. And the one thing that, Robert's done a really good job in with Kimley Horn is that, we've been able to do the conceptual design for the pathway or the multimodal pathway through the Ward Trail. And then, so as we're looking at being able to build specific segments when the funding's available, what it allows us to do is have an overarching concept and master plan, and we're just doing them in chunks. But at the end of the day, it'll look consistent because the design has been done as far as a master plan.
Okay.
Hey, that was Roger Gatlin trying to call me.
Is there room for the horse-drawn carriages that we're going to have coming through town?
Yeah, there'll be room for the horse-drawn carriages, and then we also have that Cinderella pumpkin thing we're going to do. I forgot.
Perfect. Make sure we
yeah.
get that on there too.
Yeah, that's in there. And then,
Am I missing something?
I don't know.
No, I'm just going to head up the horse crap committee.
Strike that.
that would
from
be the
notes,
equestrian committee. The
Yeah, oh,
equestrian.
okay.
What did Roger say?
I cut him off. I'm going to call him back because
My
Robert always
Wi-Fi
interrupts me.
went down. I can't get on the internet.
I just put him on my cell phone, and then he can just.
That's going to create a nasty echo, but okay.
Well, yeah. I think I got this down pat. Though I've tried this before. I got a mute button thing, a buffer button.
He can do it on his cell phone.
He's
too.
not answering his cell phone.
All right. Well, anyway, with the water master plan, it's just for your information only. It's finalized. The next step would be to hire a lobbying firm. But the problem is right now with the pandemic and the economy the way that it is, I don't believe there's going to be monies available for projects unless they pass another CARES Act, which would be specifically for infrastructure. But we are utilizing this master plan now, which pretty much has the blessing of not only town council and the engineers, but also Orange County Utilities. And the way that we're using it right now is for the 3 projects that we currently are working on, which is West 2nd Avenue, Butler and 7th, and then the Bessie project. So we make sure that we're putting in those lines as recommended by Wade Trim. But this again is just for your information only. We do have money to start looking towards actually designing. I think they broke it up into either 3 or 4 sections. We'll have to take a look at, which ones are going to be more affordable. Because if you start going into some of the HOAs, you're looking at a lot of aprons and so on and so forth that you're going to have to break up as opposed to if you just do it in Old Town Windermere. So we'll try to prioritize it as we see fit, but we're going to start looking to try to get some earmarks and grants to try to get that infrastructure in place. And it'll also allow for fire flow protection all throughout town. We'll have Roger's getting on right now. We'll have a hydrant every 500 feet.
Which, by the
Even
way,
if-
that should reduce insurance for a lot of people's homes.
Now, when
So
I
it
was
is
looking at
cost
the
saving.
plan, the existing, the streets that have water, some of them didn't have new hydrants going in. I was looking at Pine Street because I live on Pine. So you're saying that will be retrofitted with 500-foot spacing?
A lot of the lines were not sized. You need a 6-inch. Is Roger all right? You need a minimum of a 6-inch line in order to have a fire hydrant. That's the minimum. So that's what we're looking at doing, and then making sure that the systems are looped so you don't have dead ends.
Right.
Because once you have a dead end, then you have to flush those lines somehow. One of the areas that we're going to have to do a dead end is West Second Avenue, but we're trying to figure out kind of ways that instead of wasting the water, can we hook it up to somebody's irrigation line?
Something's wrong.
But again, I didn't see in the plan any additional hydrants on Pine, as an example.
Right. So if there's a need for on Pine, then we can install them as long as there is a 6-inch line. The flow is going to be the same.
No, I was just reacting to your comment about a 500-foot spacing, and I think it's much longer than that currently. So I was just curious.
Yeah, some standards ask for, I think, about 1,500, but I think we wanted to do it about 500 feet.
Okay.
And Lloyd, it may not be shown on the plan. The intent is there on what we're trying to do. The issue in the past has been private citizens who have said, hey, I want water down at my house, have put in, a 2-inch line all the way to their house. And obviously you can't support a hydrant off of that.
Yeah.
So the whole idea for the infrastructure coming back into place is to be able to provide those fire services as well as providing water services to each of the individual units.
Again, my comment was
Coming in
that
and disconnecting.
I thought it was a uniform application of 500-foot spacing with retrofit, and I didn't get that out of the plan, so that's why I was curious.
I think they'd like to try and achieve that where possible.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, when they had the fire next door to me, the fire hydrant could not give enough pressure. So they were filling the truck that the town had bought, the water truck, and that would build up the pressure and then be able to be used.
Hey, that happened to me next door too, Molly.
Yeah, so, we bought a truck for that purpose.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
Good.
but we all know that seconds matter in those circumstances. So if we have enough fire flow, that eliminates them from having to even bring the water truck. They just unscrew the top, pop it open, and then they're in business. And to have it every 500 feet, again, is a lot easier for them to access as opposed to every 1,500 feet.
Well, back during 08, the key word when I was still employed was shovel ready. So whatever we need to do to be able to say we're shovel ready, we could be in a catbird seat if funding were to come along with additional legislation.
Yeah,
That's a beautiful thing about the master plan, because we are, we're at the point now where we could be shovel ready.
yeah. We have the size of the lines, and all it is digging it up and throwing it in. Thank you again for joining us again, Roger. Can we get a motion to adjourn? I'm just kidding.
Could be. I don't know. It's almost, even my phone was kind of coming in and out of connection. Now it's reconnected.
No, I was trying to call
I
you.
don't know what's going on.
Well, the master plan, the water master plan, was just for your information only. We have started implementing it in some of the projects as far as the recommended size of the lines. Orange County has approved the design or the conceptual design. And then anytime that we actually do a design, we have to get Orange County Utilities to approve the design, because we pay for the installation and then we turn it over to them. They don't pay a dime for anything. Once it's connected, then they take over the operation and maintenance of that line. If somebody doesn't have water currently to their property, we're going to make sure that we stub it out. So they would have to pay for the meter connection costs, and then for a plumber to come out there and actually hook it up and detach the well system. And the well system can still be used for irrigation purposes, and we recommend people keep it for irrigation purposes.
but it also says that if you choose not to, as long as you don't have to dig a new well, you can keep your well, right?
Yeah, well, see, the only way we would, Department of Health, typically, if you do not have access to a water line, they'll approve you to get a new well. If you have access to potable water, they may not allow you to dig a new well.
Okay.
Because there's a potable system available to you.
Right. That's what I'm saying, though. As long as your well is working and all your systems, you can stay unattached.
Yeah,
Right.
we're not going
But
to
they will
require
also
anybody to hook up.
provide availability to keep that well for irrigation, but not potable.
Yeah. Once installed, again, we're not going to require anybody to hook up. It's going to be when they want to, or if they cannot get a Department of Health permit,
Right.
then it would be
Right.
required.
Okay.
Would,
All right.
would they have to pay the full cost then? This wouldn't be partially funded or not through an MSTU or anything?
No, we haven't really discussed MSTUs, MSBUs, or anything like that. Because again, if you create an MSTU or an MSBU, then people that have already paid for the lines are paying twice. And we don't want to hit them twice for the cost of the lines, even though you can make the argument as far as, fire protection, safety, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So right now, the town is looking at self-funding or looking for grants, or we may do an SRF loan, which is pretty much zero interest loan once we start doing certain sections in order to finalize the entire project.
It's
Right.
like, but it's like $10 million, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if it's that much.
That's what was in there.
Was it 10 million?
Yeah, I think the total,
Yeah,
10
the three
million.
phases were pretty much
Yeah.
close to the same amount of dollars.
Yeah, it was about 3.5 million per phase or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so that's
So
what I was going to say.
even a loan with no interest is going to be a lot of money for 1,000 homes.
Right. Absolutely. And what they recommended was to do it in sections, not to do it all at once. And we agreed. But, once we do one section, then the other sections are going to cry foul or,
Especially if they're
lie.
paying for it. If
Correct.
the other sections are paying for it and they're not getting it, that's not right.
Correct. So that's something for us to work out. And then that's why we're going to get the lobbyists. But right now, with the way the economy is, I don't think there's any money that's going to be available for us this next fiscal year, but maybe in future fiscal years, we'll be able to tie into something. Or if another infrastructure program is put into place, then we'll make sure that we throw our hat in the ring.
I think the good news is in the foresight, that Robert had in council. I don't want to discount what the council has done, is that they've actually been able to, say, hey, let's put ourselves in a position to understand, one, what the infrastructure requirements are by investing in a master plan, and let's understand what the impacts are. And so then we've, developed this plan that, as Lloyd said, allows us to be somewhat shovel ready, but at the same time allows us to understand what those impacts are. And so it just positions us better to at least have studied it appropriately and to have a solid plan moving forward. And so
I agree. Yeah, I agree, John. But I think we should do the same thing with sewers then, because I think the sewers are a bigger problem.
Yeah, that's.
Molly, I will tell you, you're absolutely right, because it would be nice to have everything on sewer. But I'll tell you what, that plan, one, from a costing perspective, and I guarantee there's going to be a lot of people that don't want lift stations in the front yard, because that's what's ultimately going to happen. There's going to be many lift stations everywhere, because that, as you know, water doesn't really care about gravity, but poop does.
The sewer
That was
systems.
estimated at about 35 million, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Sewer
just don't
system.
blow uphill. Water does.
Yeah,
I heard 50.
it's up
And
there.
then,
Because,
and then we have, a lot of the maintenance. And so you're going to have like a lot of mini force mains, a lot of mini pump stations.
Mhm.
If you really think about it, Main Street kind of sits on a crest, and a lot of our community goes downhill from that.
Yeah.
And, it's
Our
not
neighbor just put in a new septic, and they didn't even realize they had to put a pump in.
yeah.
I hope they're not using it until they do.
Well, that's fairly well controlled by the health department, but I hope you're right, because let me know if you're
Before we
off.
leave that topic, I just want to plant the seed, because we're Florida Outstanding Waters. If some type of state funding, like to Save Our Springs, came along. I've always contended that through our lobbyists, the Butler chain is similarly high priority as Springs, and why couldn't outstanding Florida waters be included in the scope of an amendment to that legislation? So when we think about talking with our lobbyists in Tallahassee, that might be something to be talking about and thinking about because of the unique environmental situation we have here in Windermere.
What do you mean springs?
The Savior Springs legislation that
But we're not-
created a lot of state money for septic system retrofitting and bringing in central sewers, but it's only in spring sheds.
But-
And my frat brother Lee Constantine was heavily involved in that.
But we're not spring fed.
My point is we're on a Florida outstanding water, which
Yeah.
environmentally is similarly as sensitive as a spring. So it would require legislative change, but I think the uniqueness of the outstanding nature of the water body warrants that discussion.
Okay.
Man, I think you should take that initiative on, Lloyd.
Yeah,
I'm
Lloyd.
not a lobbyist.
You could be.
Yeah, you don't
That's
have to be
good.
a lobbyist. You just have to get all the stuff together to put to a lobbyist.
The design alone is going to be really pricey because again, you're going to have to look at a ton of topos. You're going to have to figure out where the master lift stations are going to be. In addition to that, you're going to figure out where we're going to go with it. And right now, I think the only place that we can go with it would be Chase and 535.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys estimated it at 40 million when I was on council, and it was because we were going to be doing a bunch of road work at the same time. You
Well,
know,
we did that study back in the day, and we actually went and met with Dan Allen, who at the time was head of Orange County Utilities for sanitary. And the only place that we could really make a particular connection could potentially be to the force main on Apopka Vineland and Conroy Windermere. And he basically told us that there's no way I would ever allow you to connect to that because the capacity on that force main will never be able to support the additional load that you guys would put on it. So you'd end up having to go out to the RIP areas out near Orange County National. So, you know, are we ready to go miles and miles and miles?
Are we ready to get back on the track?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Because stormwater, sanitary wasn't even on that.
We can talk about
Sorry.
wastewater all day.
sorry.
No worries. The next topic is Butler and 7th, and I'll go ahead and present this because I've been presenting it for the last 2 weeks.
And you've been painting out in the streets for the last day.
Yeah, and even this morning I was out there marking up the streets so people can actually get a feel for what we're talking about. So if you're not aware, the town of Windermere applied for several grants through the local mitigation strategy funding source. And what that is that should a natural disaster ever occur and FEMA gives money to the county, then that money would be available to projects that are on a priority list that's already established. So when I first came here, that was one of the things that I asked Mike Galora and John to work on. And we wound up getting probably about 9 projects within the funding list from Hurricane Irma, because again, we just did it as, okay, let's just throw it out there. If it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, it doesn't, but it happened. So we're getting about $1 million for West 2nd Avenue and probably another 2 million split between Bessie and the Butler and 7th project. And I believe there's a 3rd project included in that we had to connect to it. But in conjunction with that, we had an IPO from Kimley Horn Associates to where we asked town council, okay, if we were going to go ahead and design a stormwater system with a roadway, because they always wanted to talk about, okay, what do we do with the roadways as far as, making them better, or, do we look in a different direction? So when we first came up with a plan of how to fix that issue over there, of course, we're looking at paving. Paving's the easiest way, and it would take the lowest amount of right-of-way to accomplish that. You're looking at about 22 feet within the 60-foot right-of-way that we would have to utilize for stormwater management. Council didn't like that. They wanted to go ahead and maintain the dirt streets because of the character, the charm, and they believe it's a speed calming. So we said, okay, let's go to the drawing board and figure out what we can do for dirt roads. And if you're not familiar with the Florida Green Book or the standards that engineers have to follow, they follow certain guidelines and well-established industry standard guidelines that are federally approved and approved by the state of Florida, just like your building codes. And pretty much if you rebuild something, you're supposed to be building it up to those minimum standards. Now, do you need to build it to those minimum standards? No. But the problem is that we have a federally funded grant to pay for this. And in the actual grant contract, it states that we would meet industry standard guidelines. And for dirt road, that industry standard is 9-foot travel widths. When you look at 7th Avenue going down to Fernwood Park, the width of the road goes from 14 feet to 20 feet. When you look at Butler, it goes pretty much the length of Butler is about maybe 18 to 20 feet for the actual roadway width. The right-of-way width on both is 60 feet. So the minimum amount of area that we could accommodate a 9-foot or 18-foot roadway and the accommodating stormwater and utilities is about 44 feet. So when people saw that we're looking at an 18-foot roadway, the panic button was hit and people started panicking, not understanding that in front of their house, it's already 16 feet. And you're adding 2 more feet. And so the arguments came out, well, you're going to make it, you're trying to widen all the roadways, the speed's going to increase, traffic's going to increase. When they looked at the 60-foot right-of-way, they believed that we were going to utilize the entire right-of-way. And of course, there's issues with trees. And then, you know, people, what they perceive as their front yards would be negatively impacted. And that's not what we're doing. You know, we tried to explain it to them until we were blue in the face, but it just didn't work until I went out there today and actually put it down in orange paint of what it would look like. So, you know, council directed staff to look at, you know, number one, do we have to follow the minimum standards of 9 foot? And then to relook and see how we can do not only the roadways, but the stormwater systems as minimally as possible with minimal impacts to the property owners that are adjacent to this stormwater remediation project. So again, we've talked about it, and the minimum that we can do is 44 feet. And you might ask, okay, what encompasses that 44 feet? So what you do is you start with a 3-foot shoulder. Typical industry standards call for 6-foot shoulder, but we do believe we can get away with a 3-foot shoulder based upon a lot of the environmental impacts, meaning the trees, vegetation, so on and so forth. Then you have an 18-foot roadway, dirt roadway. Then on the north side, again, you would have 6 feet, which meets the minimum standards, but you might say, why is this 3 and this 6 feet for a shoulder, which is a flat grass surface? That 6 feet is the minimum width where we could put in a utility line. If the line were to break, you need that 6 feet to access that line. And then you start the swale system, which is a grass swale with a 4-to-1 slope, which would be the width of about 14 feet. So that total is about 44 feet. So when people see that, they again freak out, and you know, they believe again their front yards are their front yards, when actually you go 25 feet in front of your house, and that's what starts the right of way. So when I started marking some orange paint on people's yards, they were like, oh my gosh, I really didn't understand how close it was to my front yard. So you had Tom's Troop out there, got about 30 people together. The rally cry was out there, and pretty much they either didn't want, they didn't want the stormwater project because they didn't believe there was an issue, even though you have the Willards flooding and the Anime Clontz property flooding, because of those issues. So we're in a tough spot because we know there's an issue. We need to remediate that issue, or we're looking at a lawsuit from either Jim Willard or Anime Clontz. We have to fix those issues. And also, the town council wanted us to create a typical section that could be utilized all throughout town. So we would be consistent, because right now, as I said before, we're consistently inconsistent with the way that we do roadways. You can see that when you drive up and down 3rd, 4th, any other roadway, there is no typical section. They all look completely different. So this would create a typical section, and by doing that, you can create an overall maintenance and repair plan. So it doesn't matter who's public works director or how many public works employees transition throughout the years, that O&M will always be there for them to understand how to maintain that roadway, because everything is consistent. And if you throw away the $3 million in grant money that we're looking at right now, the anticipation is when we do relook at our assessments, we may have to look at the increasement of assessments, because $3 million, that's 30 years of us utilizing the stormwater assessment to gain that money back. We only get about $130,000 for projects from that assessment each and every year. So I'm totally against us throwing away that grant money over a few feet. And actually, when you go on Butler and take a look at the roadway, it's 20 feet. So we're reducing the actual roadway from 20 to 18 feet. And so what I did was I went out there, and I'm not sure if this one's going to actually demonstrate what we changed the typical section to be. But everybody knows 7th goes like this, Butler goes like this, the bottom of the bathtub is Fernwood Park. So we will be expanding the retention area over in Fernwood Park. And here was what was proposed at the very beginning, which freaked out a lot of people when you see browns and blues and all sorts of stuff. People thought, oh, it's a brown, it's a ditch, it's going to be like this mud looking kind of ditch thing. And that's not the case. It's actually a nice looking swale. And they actually have a nice looking, or not a nice looking swale, but they already have a swale system right over here with a culvert that goes into Fernwood Park. So talking about Butler, I went out there today with Travis, and we had to keep a lot of the residents away because we just wanted to figure it out on our own before we had everybody coming up to us, getting in our ear, talking about, either what we're doing is bad, it's negative, or, trying to influence us one way or the other. But if you look it up here, this guy's house right here, when I marked that orange paint right there, we had Miss Willard was with us, and she was surprised at how much right of way that we did have. If you look at a sight line all the way over here, that's pretty much where you see some of the utility poles. So what we did was, in order to be fair for everybody, since we're doing 44 feet of project width, we would give 8 feet on either side to be fair and equitable for both parties on Butler. Again, this is only on Butler because it's a different story on 7th. So you have 8 feet and 8 feet that is added on to what their 25 feet is right now. And then you have the 44 feet. So here would be the 14-foot swale and the 6 foot of utility line. And when you do that measurement, it actually lines up with the start of Butler, the dirt road. And then when you measure the 18 feet for the minimal standard for a dirt road, it actually leaves about 2 feet of dirt road to the south. And then you have the 3 foot of shoulder. And there's one tree over here that we'd be able to save because we could probably go about 1 or 2 feet further south in order to save that one tree. But that 44 feet would be a straight shot, and again, the argument of speeding, increasing traffic, I believe it negates that because you're reducing the width of the road, and then you're going to be providing adequate stormwater. In addition to that, town council directed me to go ahead and take a look at people who aren't taking care of their stormwater on their properties. I can guarantee you there's at least 3 that are up here that currently aren't taking care of their stormwater on their own properties. Once they get that code enforcement violation, their eyes are going to widen up because they're going to have to not only get an engineer, they're going to have to permit, then they're going to have to construct a stormwater system on their property. And due to the fact that their properties pretty much go like this towards Butler, you know, it's a huge amount of money, and it's going to be a huge inconvenience to what they see in their front yards. This project right now would be able to take care of not only the roads issue that is coming from up here, but it would also take care of their issues that are right here without having negative impacts to their properties. So I do see them not, I mean, for lack of a better term, falling in line, because once they see the price tag of what they're looking at, you know, and what we're designing, they'll be more accepting to what's being designed as opposed to completely ripping up what they see as their front yard. So you're looking at again, a 14-foot swale with 6-foot utility shoulder, and that lines perfectly up with the roadway, and then the 18-foot roadway, and then 3 foot of shoulder. Now, with forest, it's a different story. Forest, there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of vegetation. And like you have the schoolhouses, I believe, right here. Here is forest. So you have like a little retention here. Here's Tom Stroop's house, where he has a lot of vegetation. Down here, there's really not a lot of vegetation. So when we talk to Kimley Horn Associates and we talk to the neighbors and so on and so forth, you know, they were completely against the 18 feet. Again, most of the roadways between, I think, 15 and 16 feet. So you're looking at 3 feet addition to that roadway. I will argue with those people all day long that 3 feet is not going to make a difference to traffic or speeding. You need at least 15 feet for emergency vehicle as a minimum standard anyway. So when I went out there today, we're going to have to do some creative engineering on this side right here. And the way that we would do that would probably be looking at maybe doing a linear swale along Forest, and then maybe create some swales on the south side because you have a lot more space. That would leave us the ability to save a lot of these trees over here on the north side. So you would have the swales would be probably on the south over here, and then you would flip it to where the swales would be on the north side over here. So when you get over here, you'd have about 8 feet of just addition to the property lines, and then you would start that 14 feet. But with this, because there's a lot of trees and vegetation, we would have to add probably another 3 feet. So that 3 feet goes to 11 feet. So now here you have 11 feet. And then down here, you'd have 5 feet from the actual property line or from the right-of-way line. But if you go out there and take a look, when you start that 14 feet with the 6-foot utility shoulder, the 16 or the 18-foot road, and then the 3-foot shoulder, you're only losing, like this is pretty much a brand new house, and you take a look at straight down, you'd be losing 1 camphor tree and a dead oak that's out there. So 2 trees would go. That's it. And then when we go further over, there's a huge oak that's down here a little bit that we're going to want to make sure that we protect. And when I went out there and met with the Stroops, both Don and Tom, and then I met with Donna Steele and then Carol Willard, what we'd have to do in this area here is we would have to go ahead and start moving the roadway to the north. By moving the roadway a little bit to the north, again, that seems like a little bit of a traffic calming when you have a little bit of a curve because it's not a straight shot. And then the Stroops understand that they're going to be losing some of this area over here once you start meandering it over. And then once you hit this point right here and take a look straight to Fernwood Park, it's already a swale system. So you're pretty much not impeding anything from that point on. So the only creative engineering that's going to have to happen is up here. And when you get to here, I believe we're able to go ahead and accomplish everything. So meeting Tom and the Willards, both of them agreed that it makes sense. You know, their fears of what they see from an aerial as opposed to when they see it written out on the ground and they can actually view it changes their whole viewpoint. So they stated to me that, yes, that makes sense. And they would not be in opposition to it. They are still in opposition to the width of the actual roadway from 16 to 18 feet. But if it's a matter of losing a project and gaining a project, I will again tell them, you know, it's 2 feet, you know, and the town doesn't have the money to remediate the stormwater issues, and you're opening yourself up for liabilities that if we were to be sued, then what argument does the town council have to somebody that lives in the Manors, the Willows, Marina Bay, when they say, well, why'd you pay $200,000 out, like the McCarthy issue? Why'd you pay all this money out when you knew you could have fixed the problem? And the response of, well, I didn't want to hurt people's feelings is not a good response. And there's no jury that would agree with anybody in that.
Robert?
Yes, ma'am.
And am I correct in understanding that this is all the right-of-way area anyways? You are not taking any property from any of these people, right?
Not taking any property from any of those people.
Okay, they have been moving, maybe allowing their property to move into the easement.
Absolutely. They've been
Correct.
planting trees, planting all sorts of stuff within the right-of-way that has grown up. But once people, you know, believe it, they believe that their property ends at the dirt road, and that's not the case. Again, you measure 25 feet from your front door, that's where the right-of-way starts.
Not necessarily. It depends where your house sits.
Well, it depends on where your house sits, but the majority of them, you know, it's 25-foot setback
Because
from the.
you needed a 25-foot setback, but some people, you know, went a little further. The other question I have is on Butler. There's a huge drop off in elevation from 6th Street to 7th. Is that right? Yeah, 6th to 7th Street there. You know, I mean, like the water just comes rushing down there. Does this address any of that issue?
Yeah, this would take care of, because right up here is 6th. That's where we start.
Go to your last one. You're on 7th. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's where. Yeah.
Yep.
So go to 6th Street.
Which is right here.
Yeah. Okay. So from 6th to 7th, I mean, we're talking like maybe 10 or 15 feet. The road goes down. I mean,
Yes.
in elevation.
You can see it right here.
Okay. So what happens? Does the road still take that same path, and you just try to pick it up on the sides or the water, or what?
Yeah, you'd have a 14-foot swale. You'd pitch it to the south or pitch it to the north to get into the swale system. And then once it hits here, you go into a piping system to go to the retention area.
But Molly, the other thing too, Robert, if you look at when you look at that profile, the center line of 6th Road on that profile, there's like a little triangle. I don't know if you can zoom in on that, you guys. But what they're actually doing, if you look at 6th Avenue center line, which is where they're peaking the road up a little bit. Now keep
Oh,
going
they're
up,
gonna,
Robert. Go to
they're
your
gonna
left,
berm
go to
it
your
like,
left to 6th Avenue and the center
Yeah.
line, and you'll see where the existing road is and the profile below the highlighted version. And so they're peaking that a little bit so that the water actually isn't coming off of 6, is actually going to come back down into the storm structure that we currently have. And I'm sorry, I don't have the control of the
So-
mouse.
so
but
they're
Rob,
gonna
keep going
kind
to
of
your
br-
left a little bit.
so they're gonna like create a swale on both sides of the road?
Yeah, so what they'll do is they'll peak the intersection of 6th and Forest so that a lot of the water coming down 6th will actually go back to the existing storm structure we have. In
Oh, I
addition to
got you.
that, the other thing that Robert's working on with a lot of the residents, and there's a resident right there on the corner of 6th and Butler, that
Yeah,
has a tremendous amount of water coming off of their home.
yes, he
And so
does.
he's working, in addition, he's also working with Wade Trim to be able to allow and, get these residents to start controlling more of their stormwater so it doesn't
Okay.
all pour into the right of way. So I would
Okay.
say the house on the corner, if you look at that little circular drive on the corner of 6th and
Yeah,
Butler, that's a
Yeah.
huge runoff component right now. And there is actually stormwater inlets right there that we just need to get them to tie into with the way that they're dealing and treating their existing stormwater on that circular drive.
oh, I
Okay.
got you.
And then
Okay.
when you go one house further, which is the little one-story house,
Right,
same thing happening. So you got a lot of these houses that are right off the corner of 6th, coming down Butler on the east side. That
yeah,
are contributing, big contributing factors to
okay,
that.
okay,
And again, you have a lot of vegetation here, and that's why we're looking at doing the swale systems to the north or to the east. And then we do have an area to where we can maybe fluctuate 2 to 3 feet by still maintaining that 3-foot shoulder. Because right now, the Clonts and a lot of these people over here are experiencing flooding, and then the Willards are experiencing flooding. So everything's coming down here and coming down here, and then flowing into these properties and not making into the retention area. And actually, when you come down here, it's coming down through Fernwood and down the dock.
And that's the issue
Yeah.
with all the west side properties, Molly, are lower than the road. And so
Yeah.
what you have to do is super elevate the road back towards away from them. And then that's why you see the brown. So what we're trying to do is pitch the road back, almost like
Yeah.
a catcher's mitt, to push
Yeah.
it back to the east. At
it's,
that
it's,
point,
it's worked in front of our house. The
yeah, it's the
town,
same philosophy
the
for
town
you.
grading it that way has really worked
Yeah.
well.
You got to pitch it away from the lower homes.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's our intent, is to, again, pitch it, the roadway, then you have the 3-foot, the roadway was gonna be like this with the 6 feet, and then you have the 14-foot swale. That's the new typical section that we're gonna be doing. And again, the way I can describe it a million times to people, but until they actually see it and feel it and touch it and whatever, then they understand. I think that's what happened today with like Tom, the Willards. They still need to understand again too, is that, the town it's Windermere, and people perceive us as being really, really wealthy when it comes to tax base and whatnot, but we're not. So in order to afford these things, we either have to increase the assessments or taxes, but that's why we seek out grants. And I don't think we want to miss out on grant opportunities over 2 feet.
yeah, and you might also, I don't know if you have it, you probably don't have anything that shows this, but from what I was told repeatedly by Mr. Ward, is that's the way the dirt roads were originally, with swales and with catching it on the sides and everything. So it's kind of like we're going back to where we were. until
it's-
they kept grading and getting rid of them instead of keeping the swales.
Yeah, I mean, that was when Elmer was here probably, but
Yeah.
you know, wherever you go and you see dirt roadways, you probably see, you know, swales on either side. You know,
Yeah.
that's and that we were up front with the residents, you know, saying, okay, well, listen, if you don't want paved roadways, again, that would have taken 22 feet of right of way. When you do a dirt roadway, you're going to impact a larger area.
Right.
So of course they're like, you know, people are like, sure, whatever. And then we show them it, and now they're like, no, that's not what we want. And I'm like, well, there's no, you know, magic wand I can wave that can, you know, keep everything exactly the same and then take care of the stormwater system at the same time. Something has to change, and we can't keep our head in the sand, no pun intended, for much longer, because, you know, these people are getting frustrated, and you're going to be, again, looking at
Tell these
litigation.
guys, hey, I'll be right back, you guys. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
I'm on the line with,
Okay.
It just means
No,
the meetings will be a lot faster.
what do you need from us?
I would need a recommendation from you guys that the 44-foot width, the 44 to maybe 47, because depending upon how big the swell has to be, would be adequate enough as a typical section for the town council to consider for this project.
Are you saying 44 or 47?
It could range to 47, and the only way it would range to 47 is, let's say that we have to condense an area to protect a tree and then expand an area to make up for that capacity issue that we may have.
Because you need a 4-to-1 gradient, right? You know, for
Correct,
mowing
sir.
purposes. So that's why it's got to be wider as opposed to deeper.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a 22-foot road. We
No.
have
No,
a
18. 18-foot road.
18-foot road, a 6-foot shoulder on one side. That's 24.
Here. Well, I'll do it for you real quick.
Yeah, do it for me again.
So we can write it down: 3-foot shoulder, grass, 18 feet, dirt road,
Okay,
6 foot or 6 feet, grass, shoulder, which doubles as the utility corridor. And then 14 to 17 feet of swale.
and all of this area is right away right now, or easement.
It's right away. It's all owned by the town.
Yeah, I don't see where the issue is.
We have 60 feet to work with, Molly.
Yeah, and I don't see where the issue is. I mean, I mean, I know everybody here infringes on it, but I don't even understand why we have the right to say no.
We try to be conscious of, you know, the vegetation, the trees, and so on and so forth, you know, to a certain point. But I think we're at the point where we've compromised enough to where we're at the bare minimum at this point. We just can't give any more. So the 44 to 47, we would ask for a recommendation of approval from LRP to take to town council.
All right, I'll make a motion that we recommend 44 to 47.
I'll second it.
Is John still there? Roger, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here, right. I cut
Okay.
my video because I thought might make better, might get better reception.
So as long as you're not on the toilet, sir.
But,
that's
yeah, I
fine.
can second the motion, I guess.
I really
Yes.
like walking the dirt road, so keep as many trees as you can. It's really nice.
That was our intent, and the only 2 trees that would have to come out on the 7th Avenue would be a camphor, which is invasive anyway, and there's no
Yeah.
way to do it.
Yeah, I know.
And then
Yeah.
there's a huge dead oak that's over there anyway. But so there's a motion and a second, so we need a vote. And is John going to vote or?
Apparently
Is
not. Do
John,
we
did
need
John
him?
get back?
You've got a quorum without him.
Yeah, you have a quorum without him, and he can stay for the record after as well. So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Thank you.
You can confirm with John later that he didn't oppose.
Robert, have you gotten anything definitive from FEMA, in regards to the 16 and 18 foot differences in the road width?
Right now, the contracts say that we have to meet the minimum standards. We're trying to figure out if there is a
Coming
guidebook.
close to a close.
All right, we're looking at different guidebooks. There's like an ASHA book, or that is somewhat different from the Florida Green Book. And then we would ask them again, as far as minimal standards, if there is environmental impacts, if there's trees, as long as we maintain at least some sort of minimum standards, would that be okay? Or can we ask for?
Oh, Robert, you froze. Come back.
While we're waiting, I think this is prime for the development of a BMP manual for sand roads. And that could become a standard, even if it's a Windermere standard. And all we probably have to do is get Orange County to approve it.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying. And if he can get, though, less wide roads, narrower roads, it does keep the traffic speed down and the amount of traffic. So.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern, but we obviously don't want to lose funding because this is
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But there will be choke points where we're going to have no option, whether it's big oak trees or, some of those environmental factors. And we, obviously do need to find out that we can, get a variance of sorts for that.
Okay. Yeah. See what you
Sorry
can
about
do.
that.
Hey, Robert, I don't know if you could hear it, but one of the things that I think that we need is a BMP manual for maintenance of sand roads. And if there's not one in existence in the state, we draft that, get it adopted by the county, and there's your standard.
The standard will be part of the design and construction. So after that, they will show us the BMPs as far as maintaining that typical section of roadway. And our hope is to use this typical section throughout town where appropriate. Now, there may be some slight adjustments or amendments to it, but at least you have that typical section. The people would know how to maintain a 14-foot swale. They're going to know, that the minimum width for a utility is 6 foot, and then how to grade and maintain that 18-foot of dirt road.
Yeah, but you're developing a structural BMP with the swells. And by
Yes,
having
sir.
a city code or template, I think this could become BMP, both structural and operational.
Agreed. And everybody becomes their own designer. People are talking about ditch blocks and all this other stuff. Ditch blocks create more issues, more maintenance. These swales will have to be reestablished every so often. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to have to make sure that we clear the culverts underneath the aprons for the people's homes. We know that. But again, at least this starts the dominoes of what the other streets eventually will have to look like if they want to maintain those dirt roadways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good investment by the town to come up with, these standards and manuals and such, because obviously through the years, maintenance and stuff have been lost through, the change of, directors, employees and things like that. So
whoever cries the most and makes the most noise.
Yeah.
And as you know, yes, there's a lot of DIYs here in town too. So
most all cases, it'll take a swale, and some of these roads have eroded so deeply. you almost have to raise the road to create the swale.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what we'll be doing. Is we'll be reestablishing the dirt roadway to an adequate height, and then we'll make sure that we stabilize it, but it maintains its as a dirt road.
It's elevation, yeah. Yeah, because that's a major problem where you just can't come in now and dig swales beside the existing elevation of the roads.
I guess to kind of rephrase it, and I don't know if everyone caught my point, but effectively, there are no guidelines for sand roads. Windermere is developing the guideline as a BMP with the swells. So that's your exemption from the existing guidance or state standards, the Green Book.
Well, the Green Book does have a guideline or standard for dirt roads.
But does it also satisfy the MS4 requirements for stormwater?
I don't know the answer to that. Do you, Robert? John's gone, so.
No,
If it's been around a long time, it wouldn't. So what you're doing is you're updating the Green Book to incorporate municipal stormwater management and developing a new BMP, structural and operational, for sand roads.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Green Book does give a minimum width and then the minimum shoulders for a dirt roadway, but it doesn't indicate the amount of swale system that you're going to need for that roadway. They just care about the road and the shoulder.
Exactly.
And that's for the engineers, and that's where the engineers come in with, you know, the amount of area that they're going to need for that 4-to-1 slope, and then adequately when they do the calculations of the flows and the capacity, you know. But I think that median average is going to be about 14 feet.
I think a dialogue with the Florida DOT district engineer on the discussion of modifying that and using this as a template may have some merits. I don't know if it'll lead itself to grant funds, but if there is some cost in doing that, I'm sure the Chain of Lakes Advisory Board would chip in, because we've been talking about the need for a sand road BMP, and not just one specifically, and a best management practice portfolio for the proper design and maintenance of sand roads from a water quality perspective.
Yeah, and actually, it's a great comment too, because the terminus of this, it all goes into the Fernwood retention area, which we are going to make into a rain garden with the appropriate vegetation in it. So not only does it slow down the water, it captures the water, but you're going to have vegetation within the actual retention area itself that, you know, provides more nutrients, so on and so forth, as it percolates into the actual lakes.
So if you end up with trying to do something that you could make universally applicable for not just Windermere, but for sand roads, at least in Florida, and you need a little more funding because here's some costs to develop a manual that not only talks about the design, but the maintenance from a BMP perspective, let us know.
Will do.
Yeah, I think you're on some sort of track there, Lloyd, because you'd mentioned tying in Florida's most outstanding waters with the springs. Most of these springs are in rural areas and have dirt roads that lead to them.
Yeah. Well, maybe doing this one will be a good example, get it done and see how it works. And
Yeah, it could be a demo project.
a demo and keep promoting it as a standard, and maybe there'll be some modifications after we do it.
Yeah, it could be a
And
water
then
quality demonstration, demonstration project, with one of the products being the modifications to the Green Book.
Right, good idea.
Cool.
I guess we don't have to take any formal action
All right.
on this, but I think that's a good plan to pursue it, because then once it really is an adopted standard, like Lloyd's saying, it becomes a little easier to convince people we have to do it too.
Right.
Because there's a lot of resistance to swales, and it's going to take some observation, because people tend to fill in. They don't like the water sitting in these swales, and you see they dump their grass clippings in it and everything else, and pretty soon just increasing the maintenance of the swales. So there'd be some education needed to maintain these things.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, the town's going to be responsible for the maintenance of these, but, again, we have to follow NPDES guidelines. And if we see anybody that is, throwing clippings, the type of fertilizers they put on their property, there's going to be an education process to this as well. But we can also, put code enforcement on people if they're violating any of these guidelines. But
Right.
we make sure that we adhere to NPDES because we're under a consent order when I first got here, and thankfully we had John and Mike and everybody to get us out of that. Thanks for joining us again, John.
Roger, before you look for adjournment, could you maybe get John on the record for his opinion on the 44?
Yeah, John, Molly made a motion, I seconded to recommend to the council that this typical cross-section, which will take from 44 to 47 feet of kind of reconstruction in the right-of-way, that we proceed with it, so.
Yes, and I agree with that because it follows our Muni code, it follows FDOT standards, it follows ASHTO standards and
Right.
FHWA standards. And really, as we begin to look at, and I hate to use the term taking the right of way back, but also utilizing it in its proper way. The whole idea behind this is to protect our lakes and protect the value of who we are and our, and so what we don't have a lot of places that we have retention ponds and all the other stuff. The only thing we have is right of way and linear, treatment trains. And so if we don't utilize that to protect ourselves, and everybody's made the edict, we're going to have dirt roads. We've got to be able to protect ourselves. And so that's kind of, my position on it. But, at the same time, we also have to be diligent. And look what our town manager did today, going out and meet with individual residents, having an engineer to be able to, massage the design appropriately so we're not destroying the lives of people and destroying their stuff that they've invested in, but yet still making sure that we're maintaining everything. So wholeheartedly, I agree that we should have a standard, that we work towards, because we don't always have Robert here. We won't always have Scott here. And so if we don't establish those baseline standards, well, I hope we have Robert here.
We can have,
he and I are going to retire
we can have
together.
a new motto.
And it's going to be one
We can
hell
have
of
a
a
new
retirement
motto.
party.
I have no
Dirt
plans
roads
to go
matter.
anywhere else.
That'll be our motto.
Well, it's, and people that aren't flooding need to understand that some other people are flooding, and this is a way to
Yes.
help prevent that.
Yep.
Yeah.
The whole idea is, it's like you kink a hose, Molly, or you fix one area and the water goes somewhere else. If you don't look at it holistically and you don't have standards and designs in which you're working to, then, we're fooling ourselves. We can't continue to go around town and Band-Aid. And that's one of the initiatives that Robert's taken on. We've gone above and beyond. We've got amazing amounts of grant money coming in to be able to support our initiative. And we can't let these little minor hiccups affect it,
Good. Any other business?
Okay.
Please no. This is my fourth night.
Yeah, let's all go eat
He's
dinner.
either a Jag or a Dolphin fan.
Oh, no, neither.
I am, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah, me
Did the
too.
game start yet? What time does it start? 8?
Hey, it's the only pro football I can stomach.
You can stomach
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
I
Well,
can't
I'm all-
stomach pro football with no
Sorry.
fans, and then
Yeah.
in
You
the
must have
background they put the
stomach
cloud.
of a goat. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it. Y'all have a great night.
All right, thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
Night.
let's,
Thank you all.
we've approved adjournment.
Oh, there you go.
Adjournment.